So 3-5 is very, very similar to 3-4. So in 3-4, you knew that the lines were parallel, and then we used that information to answer questions about the angle measures with all those special relationships, corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side interior, all that fun stuff. Today we're going in reverse. So I will give you some information about the angles, and you will have to decide if the lines are parallel. So a converse is when you take an if-then statement and you switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. So the if part is like the word if is always in the front. The word then is always going to be it for the second half, but you actually flip the words that were after that. So the way I remember this is a converse is a shoe, right? Mm-hmm. A flip-flop is also a shoe. So when you take the converse of an if-then statement, you flip-flop the if and the then, the parts that follow the if and the then, the hypothesis and the conclusion. So converse, shoe, flip-flop. You flip the statement, okay? That's why I picked the world's ugliest, will probably stay in your memory for a little while, shoe. A converse flip-flop. There you go. If anyone sees those, buy them for me. 7.5.
You should give me $1,000.
$1,000. I don't think they run about that high.
It's okay.
Probably be free. They're pretty hideous. All right, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
So you do not need to write this. Just listen. So this is how you would do the converse. So first you identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So in this statement, if I live in Belleville, then I live in Illinois. I live in Belleville is the hypothesis. I live in Illinois is the conclusion. Everyone still with me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the second thing you want to do is you want to flip-flop. So you can see down at the bottom. This is the original statement. If I live in Belleville, then I live in Illinois. The converse, you just switch them. Now the Illinois part is front and the Belleville part is in the back. So if I live in Illinois, then I live in Belleville. That's simply writing the converse. Now, sometimes the converse is true. Sometimes it is not true. Is this true? If I live in Illinois, then I live in Belleville.
Yes, it's true.
Are you sure?
No. Why not?
So Belleville's in Illinois, right? If you live in Belleville, you're definitely in Illinois.
It's a lot of different parts of Illinois.
Right. Like I live in Columbia, but I still live in Illinois, right? So you can live in Illinois without living in Belleville. So this is a statement that is not true. So sometimes the converse is true. Sometimes the converse is not true. We're more concerned with just flip-flopping it. So sometimes it'll ask if it's true, sometimes it won't, but usually you're just flip-flopping it, and that's that. Okay, so here is example 1. I just want you to write the new statement with me. I don't want you to have to write this twice. So we'll read through it. We'll try to write the converse. So please write the converse of the following statement, then decide if it's true. So if 2 segments are congruent, then the 2 segments have the same measure. So I want to take the hypothesis, which is 2 segments are congruent, and the conclusion, which is the 2 segments have the same length, and I want to flip-flop them. So now it will say if, what?
If the segments have the same length.
So we want the part that used to be behind the then to be behind the if. So which one would it be?
If the 2 segments have the same length.
Yep. So if 2 segments
The 2 segments are congruent.
have the same length, comma, then the 2 segments are congruent. Now we have to decide if that's true. Is that true?
We have to write the bottom thing down? Like the things that you wrote?
I told you could just write the answer, so that's the answer. And then we want to say if that's true or not true. That is true. So sometimes the converse isn't true. Sometimes it is true. Here it is. When it is true, here's a little fun fact. It's called a biconditional statement. It means that the flip-flop works. The converse is also true. All right. Any questions? Let's look at number 2. So write the converse of the true statement, then decide whether the converse is true. So the first one says, if the measure of an angle is between 0 and 90, then the angle is acute. So write the new statement with me. If what? Yep, you just flip-flop them. So now the new statement says if, I'm going to put an angle is acute. It sounds kind of weird for me to put the there. I'm not sure. So yeah, if, I want you to write the answer here. So if an angle is acute, comma, then what? Very good. Then the measure of the angle is between 0 and 90 degrees. True or not true? True. That's the definition of being acute. Usually definitions can work forwards and backwards, okay? All right, you can just watch me on number 2, but I do want to do this one because this is kind of interesting. This says if angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical angles, then angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. So the converse would say what? If so just flip-flop the parts. If what? Will it help if we underline them? So this is the original hypothesis. This is the original conclusion.
The angle 1 is congruent to angle 2.
Good. Then
The angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical.
all right, so I do agree that the original statement is true, right? Vertical angles are always congruent. But are congruent angles always vertical? No, we have learned lots of different ways that angles can be congruent. You can have angle bisectors. You could have a triangle with 3 congruent angles. There's lots of different ways to get congruent angles. They don't have to be vertical angles. Alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding. Those are all relationships that give us congruent angles that are not vertical angles. So this one is not true. All right? That is sort of the first half of the lesson. Now we're going to switch to what this means in relationship to what we did last week with 3-4. So any questions now? So the first time through, we're just going to sort of talk about it, and then I'm going to try to sum up all these relationships before we do an example. So this first one says, remember, it's the converse of what we did last week. So last week I said, hey, these lines are parallel. You know the corresponding angles are congruent. Well, now we're flip-flopping it. And I'm saying, hey, these are angles. Their corresponding angles are the lines congruent. Or sorry, are the lines parallel. So it's just the converse, okay? And the converse on these things works. If the corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel.
You want to write this?
No, I'm going to sum it up for you at the end. It works for alternate interior as well. If alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. If alternate exterior angles are congruent, we can conclude that the lines are parallel. If same side interior angles are congruent, oh, nope. I got ahead of myself. What do same side interiors have to be?
Same side or inside. Maybe inside.
Yeah, and what do they have to be? Not congruent. They're the only one that's not congruent. They have to be what? What does it mean when they add to 180? What's that called?
90.
Starts with an S. Someone said it. Yeah, so same side interior, that's the oddball. That's the one that has to be supplementary. Now, here is a special note. And you don't need to write this part either. You can never say that two lines are parallel because they look parallel. Okay? You have to either have those little arrows in the diagram. You have to be told in the directions that the lines are parallel. Or one of the things we just talked about today has to be true, one of those converses. Okay? So before we do examples, I just want to sum up all those things that I let you skip. So we're going to write a big if-then statement. If, I want you to write this with me. If,
Are we gonna write other stuff?
yeah, we'll do a few examples. So if there's 4 things that could happen that will lead us to the conclusion, then the lines are parallel. You'll see.
This is gonna take that much space.
Wait,
It will take 4 lines.
is we writing like
You are writing exactly what I'm writing. You are leaving 4 lines. So we're basically writing 4 if-then statements, but we're only writing the then part once because it's always the same.
Oh, okay.
So if, one way to do it is the corresponding angles are congruent. If corresponding angles are congruent, comma, then the lines are parallel. What do you think the next one is? What are the other relationships we talked about last week?
That last thing, the equal sign, the squiggly, that's congruent.
Congruent, yep. Do you guys remember alternate interior? Very good. Alternate interior angles are congruent. So if the alternate interior angles are congruent, comma, then the lines are parallel. And yes, you had them right. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. Then the lines are parallel. And then what's the odd man out? That's the only one that's not congruent.
Hold on.
Same side interior, good. So same side interior angles have to be what? Someone was supposed to say it before I got all the way done writing it. So the same side interior angles are supplementary, then the lines are parallel. So you're going to see a diagram today. Some stuff's going to be marked on it. These are the 4 things we're looking for. These are the 4 reasons that we can use to conclude, hey, these lines are parallel. Do you just want to write the answers? I think you've written a lot today. Just write the answers with me. I want you to practice how we're going to answer these, but I think your hands are probably getting a little tired. So in part A, do we have any sort of special angle relationship happening? No, there's just one angle. That's never going to be enough to do anything. So the question is there enough information to conclude that these lines are parallel? I'm just going to say no, not enough info.
Wait, so we write that too?
I want you, you don't have to draw the diagram, but I want you to practice writing it. Because a lot of students will only give me like half the answer. So I want you to get in the habit of writing the yes or no part and then the why. So part B, what am I looking at here? What type of angles are these?
No,
They're congruent. They are acute, I agree. What's the relationship though? Look at the list we just wrote down. The 4 different relationships. Does this fall into any of those categories?
Same side?
Same side, exterior?
They're same side, but you got one of each. They're in the same position.
Corresponding?
Corresponding. So the corresponding angles are congruent. Is that enough to show that the lines are parallel? Read what you just wrote down.
Yes.
It is. So your answer needs to have all of that. It needs to say, yes, this is enough information, and the information I have is about corresponding angles, and that they're congruent. So every year someone will just say yes. Every year someone will say yes, congruent. Every year someone will say yes, corresponding. I need it all. Yes, the corresponding angles are congruent. That's how I know the lines are parallel. All 3 parts needed.
You said the info that I have is. What you say after that?
I don't remember. Is there, what information do you have? So we have information about the corresponding angles. That's the relationship, and we know that they're congruent. So you need the type of angles, and then are they congruent or are they supplementary, and is that enough? So yes, it's enough. The angles are corresponding. They are also congruent to one another, and that's what I'm looking for. So you don't need to draw the pictures, just work through the answer with me. What's the relationship I am looking at on number 4? If I trace the angles, they make like 2 V's pointing at each other. What are those called?
Transversal?
Vertical angles. Very good. Vertical angles. Do vertical angles tell us anything about parallel lines? No. So this is actually not enough information. We knew about vertical angles in chapter 2 before we even talked about what a transversal was. And a good tip off is if I take my pencil and I cross, let me make it a little bigger. I could totally cover up line R, and I haven't removed any of the information that I have about the angles. That's a pretty good indicator that you can't show that these lines are parallel. There's just not enough happening there, okay? They might be, I just don't know from the fact that 82 and 82 are congruent, this relationship is not enough. Those are just vertical. All right, next. What type of angles am I looking at?
R and S. Parallel.
So R and S are parallel, I agree. So yes. Why? How do you know that? The boxes are what?
90 degrees.
They're 90 degrees. They're congruent. And are they one of the angle relationships from the list?
Yeah.
They're both to the upper left of where these lines intersect. So they're in the same position. What do we call that?
Same side.
They're same side, but one's inside, one's outside.
Corresponding.
Yes, very good. So yes, these are corresponding angles, and they are Congruent. Yep, you need the congruent part, you need the corresponding part, and you need the word yes. So you guys just want to watch for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So help me out. Part A. So example 5, part A. What kind of angles are these?
Hold on. Those are
Same side,
interior.
interior. They're marked as being congruent. Is that useful to me?
Yeah.
Same side interiors have to be what? It was the 4th bullet point we wrote down. Same side interiors have to be
Supplementary.
supplementary. These are not supplementary. They might be, I don't know. But what I'm given is that they're congruent. Same side angles congruent is not enough information. So this is a no.
They're congruent. They have to be on the outside for them to be congruent, or what?
You need them to be corresponding alternate interior or alternate exterior.
You still supposed to be making it?
Nope, you can just watch for a little bit. I think you guys have written enough.
Yeah, we do.
All right, part B, what are those? Yeah, they're alternate. They're on different sides of the transversal, but they're outside of lines A and B. So alternate exterior are what? They're marked the same, so they're congruent. Is that one of our things that we wrote down? It is. So yes, alternate exterior angles congruent is one of the reasons. All right. Let's just do like a matching. So one of these is a yes, one of these is a no. Which one do you think?
Number 7
Number 7
is
is a no. Why do you say this one's a no?
because of the line that's going through it. I'm just looking at the line.
What type of angles are these?
Correspond. I mean, alternate. Wait.
Those are like the same side interior, aren't they?
Nope.
Alternate,
Nope.
alternate interior.
Nope.
What's that? I'm not sure.
I mean,
It's a chapter 2 term.
Jesus Christ.
Starts with a V. They look like 2 V. Yes, these are vertical angles. Vertical angles are always congruent. It doesn't mean the lines are parallel. So this is not enough information. This one is a yes. Why? What's the relationship here?
They're on opposite sides.
They're on opposite sides, so it's one of the alternates.
alternate interior.
Alternate interior, and they're congruent.
Got it.
Very good.
All right, questions?
No, let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay, so again, decide if there's enough information to prove that the lines are congruent. What type of angles are these? And you can just watch
Same
again.
side interior.
These are same side interiors. So what needs to be true about these guys?
They have to be congruent. Or supplementary.
They have to be supplementary. So what you're basically checking is whether they add to 180. They do. So your answer again would be yes, and then what you just told me, the same side interiors were supplementary. Okay, I think there's one where we have to solve an equation. Let's see. Okay, yes. So this is the one I want to get to. This will be our final example. I do want you to write this one down. So this says, and actually just write the equation with me. How about that? So write what I write. Find the value of x so that the lines are parallel. So we're still not sure if the lines are parallel, but they're saying, well, what would x have to be if I wanted the lines to be parallel. So what's the relationship here? You can just write the equation with me. These are what type of angles? Same side interiors. So if I want the lines to be parallel, what needs to be true about these two? They need to either be congruent or supplementary. Which one is it? Supplementary. So what I need to do is see what x would have to be to make these add to 180. Now, if they were corresponding angles or alternate interior angles or alternate exterior angles, I'd have to find the x that made them congruent. But since they're same side interiors, I have to find the x that makes them add to 180. All right, so that's going to be 6x equals 180. When you divide both sides by 6, what does x have to be? Not all at once. It's 30. Way to go. All right, so we can summarize from here. What did we learn today? That crazy shoe was called a what? A Converse. So today we learned about a Converse statement. So Converses and parallel lines. I'm just going to draw the parallel line, make it nice and short. All right, you do have homework. It's coming at you. And then just like always, when you walk in tomorrow, we'll check it. We'll start the new stuff.